Rank the albums. I did a British various artists episode last year, now here's other places. It's not a world tour, I'm just trying to choose those I have no potential to do a full video on. Obviously I'm going to be predisposed to places where they speak English and play guitar and have an appeal that's likely to reach me. I've deleted a whole nation from this video to make it more manageable. I'll publish that separately. Place your bets now. I do intend a couple more various artist episodes for those I almost did a video on but didn't, whether because I couldn't find enough to say, so I'll throw them all together, or those where I've bailed on my fandom. But it doesn't suit this show to spend over half an episode disparaging things. I don't think people want to see that, except Weezer fans and Sonic fans. And there's also some I just forgot to mention yet. I've thought of more British ones. These are not mutually exclusive categories, whatever. My show. I feel there's no point pointing out very well-known stuff or muso delights like Slint or Whipping Boy or very well-known muso delights. There's nothing I could tell you about these that Pitchfork didn't already say. While we're in Ireland, though, okay, it feels predictable, almost cliche that this would be proximate to my taste, but JJ72 were one of those after Britpop things that didn't quite get into the groove, but still make good music. The first one's built around great singles and forgettable tracks like many debut albums are. The great singles keep it around in my collection, but the babyish voice doesn't really convince. It's not the upper range of his voice, just like the manner of it I feel is lacking. It's also very pretty, he just could have delivered more on it. A second album feels more specifically placebo indebted, and though it's got more range and more rage and it's worth keeping around, I feel the brilliance of the single of it just dominates the rest of it, and these go that way up. That band with letters and numbers for a name were working on a third album, and you can find those tracks, and they sound promising, but it just didn't fulfill that promise. It didn't get there. Maybe not quite post-Britpop, or maybe the earliest post-Britpop. I'm throwing this in with his other later band, and there are more albums, and if I really studied and really sought out the music, I could maybe pile together a video of this. I'm not that deeply interested, but we got some clues here to a real elite level songwriter that just maybe didn't quite fully realize it. Initially bound by the format of a band, but still worth it, and then the decrepit old pony club is more of a private bedroom introvert thing, and I think that more suits him. Yeah, there's more to those careers. I've not yet looked into it. He does also have a babyish voice. Is it xenophobic to say that two different Irish acts have babyish voices? It just happens to be true about those ones. Another band that do have more to them than the amount I'm familiar with, but you've gotta hear the single Fascination, and when you do, you've gotta extend it to the album and find that the album is also worthwhile, and there's a couple of singles that are nearly as enjoyable as that. It's great to see Danes maintaining this fun-loving aesthetic within a guitar pop genre. They should have been on Eurovision. It's a kind of old school thing for a band to be, but it's still welcome, and I think other bands that try something like this, like The Feeling, get a bit too whiny, Mika's a bit grating, maybe Scissor Sisters match up, but also maybe these guys are the paragon. In the intensive study of Bowieology, you'll come across Kashmir, on whose song The Cynic David Bowie featured. 2005 release. Oh, you know that. I've put that on the screen by now. Again, there's probably a lot more to this band that I've not yet learned. But just picking up this much because I liked that one song, I found that I really like all the rest of it as well. It's kind of Radiohead-esque when Radiohead were a band and enjoyable. Here are some Germans, again with a whole lot more of a career to them. I mean, there was a preceding EP to this that would make this title very funny, but you don't even need a punchline to fully enjoy this. It's that Franz wave dance punk, and unlike many other examples of it, it's a full album where it's all firing at its best. I should probably hear more of these guys. America refers to 2 continents and a lot of islands and a lot of music. I think it's important to point that out. I know it also refers to the United States of America, but mainly that's my excuse for including Canada here. I think there's only one example that I'm getting to that's neither USA or Canada, but webs. There was a fun cultural tidbit in the early 2000s with kind of LimeWire era internet stuff. Maybe not LimeWire, maybe just private sharing, which I've done a video on. And I may also have to do a video on this particular phenomenon because I know some other examples too. But what I'm pointing out here is some tracks that once got uploaded to the internet, mistagged as if they were by David Bowie, and they did sound remarkably similar to Ziggy era David Bowie. It was kind of a divergent quantum dimension, as if he stayed in the persona beyond Aladdin Sane and his music just got a bit more like intellectual and experimental, so maintaining the vibe but just trying different things with it, which a lot of fans at the time would have liked, but what they got was a different kind of good thing. In reality, those tracks were by the strange, obscure American band Marizane, who seem to still be going. Now, there's such an arcane reference that the status of their releases is not exactly worth keeping track of, but whatever, there's 5 tracks on this EP. The secret to them sounding intensely similar to that era of David Bowie is that it was produced by Tony Visconti. And yeah, he's also kind of doing the voice, and maybe they're doing the instrument sounds too. But it's still such adventurous music, maybe not in a 2000s regard, maybe in a 70s regard that it's 3 decades removed from. Actually, only 3 of the tracks are produced by Visconti, and those are the really good ones. I didn't really intend the show to come down to telling you to listen to 3 tracks, but go and listen to those 3 tracks. Maybe promoting something off the basis that it was once mistaken for something legendary ain't great, but within a certain sphere, that's one of the highest compliments you can get. I wouldn't encourage someone to directly be copyists, but it's so good. So I chased up whether they had any later releases, and there is one quite a bit later release. The liner notes the booklet directly address that they've been mistaken for Bowie in the past. And despite their obscurity in most regards, in that one little regard, it's a lot to live up to. Kind of understandably, this diverges from that, and the sounds here and what they're trying for can never be confused with David Bowie. I guess you can still see the influence in it, but sadly that's also where my interest is dissipated. This is here for this to go on top of, and for me to point out the strange existence of this band and still show them respect. I dig what you're doing, it's just 3 tracks of it really entertain me. In rifling through the collection to see what to put in this video, I got to this one, a kind of cinematic yet intimate music, like a lesbian Springsteen. And I can strongly advocate this album, but then I realized they have one more album and I should get an answer on that one, so I'm making this video properly. So over to post-production me. The first one has that power to it. Springsteen is an apt citation, maybe one they'd be tired of, but it swaps out his ornate details for punksy four-chording, downstrokes rather than details. This flashes the faster tracks and dullens the puntersome ones. Album 2 then takes it onward very understandably. They find more identity, more solidity. They have the romanticism of the Indigo Girls, but also real sharp teeth. In some ways, this is a perfect music in my view. Wowo's drive, passion, grit, that wounded snarling vocals with something to say, and just that Canadian girl touch. Biff Naked, Die Mannequin, Lilacs, and this. There are 3 EPs, 2 of them unique and generous, and of course I've gone and listened to those too. A lot of years and band members passed by, but if anything the quality only improved. Maybe in a better dimension they'd be appreciated. It's hard and unrewarding to stay afloat. If a band of this quality didn't reach sustainable celebration, then why bother? Even with a reality TV leg up, glad I expanded my collection anyway. Onelinedrawing is a guy with a lot of music that I just can't keep up with that amount of it, and this is the amount of it that I've kept up with, but these I occasionally put on, and they're really good. It's like a Bright Eyes without the harsher edges, which I know the harsher edges of Bright Eyes have some perks to them. It's also a bit cheekier, more fun. It's pointless to rank the two of these, it's just another nod as a recommend. Here are 3 different things that I can call Post-Weezer in 3 different ways. Maybe least fairly to that dog, as they may have been making music before the influence of Weezer was something they could take in. Although there's also a direct link with Weezer. This album's got a really hot single, but there's more twee stuff on it that I feel doesn't really sustain. I wish I wasn't boiling them down to one song, but that's all I know at this moment. Now here's an overt post-Weezer. I think they were a support band for Weezer. They are so obviously influenced by them. Basically what you've got here is the sound of some extra tracks for Pinkerton that are kind of not quite as good, but still maintaining that sound, which is what a lot of people wanted from Weezer. So you can indulge in that. It's like when someone makes a Sonic fan game and it's quite good. Unfortunate Gary Glitter reference though, but Americans don't really know about him. Again, I'm still among bands that definitely have more albums, and that includes Rooney, which takes the Weezer influence through to the new millennium. They sit among Wheatus and Phantom Planet and all that stuff. It's so clean and sunny and pretty, but it's just very well-structured pop songs. Without depth, with the same haircut, you'll still enjoy it. This is one of my favourite individual albums. I was even aware of Fake Shark before this album. They had a prior one that was more sasscore. And this one's like Faith No More, but a lot less obnoxious. You know that guy you know who really likes Faith No More and puts Faith No More on, and you enjoy it a little bit, but you find it quite obnoxious? Maybe push this on him. And of course he'll just call it copyism, but yeah, it's better. It's just such tight and sharp and creative screamo all the way through. It's a spectacular album, and I really admire Kevy's creativity. With that creativity comes how different the rest of the band's career is. They, or he, immediately pivoted to this kind of crunkcore hip-hop, and generally I couldn't tune into it. I liked the single, I couldn't stomach the rest. What they've made since is more like funky, chill grooves. When they come out with a new single, I go and have a look and think, yeah, but just nowhere near the extent of this. CSS were one thing promoted in the Ui's indie wave, and their debut really justifies it. It's funky and fun. It's kind of halfway between Le Tigre and Yeah Yeah Yeahs. Like the sound of that? The second album really simplified them. Structurally, these are all such simple pop songs and all like 3 minutes and no depth at all. But it works for the duration of it. It doesn't match up, but it's worth hearing. I know they did more, I didn't keep up. Now, here's one of those examples of when I like the spin-off band that someone did that Real Musos like the main band that they did, and it would be weird to mention the spin-off band without mentioning the main band. Here's the spin-off band. Maybe bordering on too well-known, but you've got to hear the Head Automatica album. Firstly, Beating Heart Baby is a singularity of the emo wave. It's lightning in a jar. It's everything coming together into the perfect emo-ish song. Maybe it's the acrobatic vocals, maybe it's the compelling beat and the backing vocals and the scratchy guitar. But if you don't already know that song, you'll love that song. And of course, an album can't really match up to that. Nothing can match up to that. But the rest of this is still very solid. Dan the Automator is a credited band member, and what he brings to an otherwise rock band sound really electrifies it, energizes it. It does also have its own natural energy in being punk rock. Really hard driving, amazing vocals, awesome album. I've got this far in planning this video, and I was going to say they made one more, and I just remembered they had a weird reunion. Let's interview myself in post about that. After album 2, which is a massive letdown. It's kind of flailing so much that it ended up putting Beating Heart Baby as a bonus track. It's one of those. And I will keep it around because it's still alright, and for me to say it's a massive letdown, that's just saying that these are quite good songs after that album. Let's just say I don't mind that it's in a case that's cracked. I respect that they've rephrased the band, but they've done that by losing one of the best parts of their sound, and just ending up as Costello copyists. It's still fun, there's still things worth hearing on here, it's just auto-tuned, a bit too loud, and a bit too simplistic. We can shrug about this one. Now, that bloody third album. They made but couldn't release a third album and had a kind of development hell period, a decade off, lost interest in that new stuff, and now apparently they're touring again with an understandable setlist distribution. I will mention Glassjaw, like over a decade after already being into Head Automatica, I thought maybe I'd better check out the very venerated band that guy is also from. I got a copy of this one and that other one, what's it called? Women a Horse? In a genre that I don't really believe in. I mean, you've already heard me slightly misuse the word emo. You know, someone's clicked downvote when I called that emo without calling this emo. This is the legit emo. Within a genre I don't necessarily get, it still blows you away. You gotta respect this. I like this album of swooshy synth pop. It's got the propulsion of rock band instruments, but then it's also got immersive synthesizers and all soft vocals all around you. They have more albums, and maybe this one I should have saved to do more research on. Will I? Dunno. This is one of those examples of someone being more known as a TV actor than as a musician, and I do consider that a bit of a loss, making someone focus on TV acting, which isn't really that creative a pursuit, versus creating stuff. But a bigger example of that, I know I call things widescreen, but a more widescreen example of that is Milla Jovovich. Milla Jovovich. If you didn't already know this, I know this sounds like something I would make up on the 1st of April. That famous film actor released an album when she was a teenager, and it's fucking good. Yeah, it sounds specifically like Tori Amos, but because that's a good thing. And that's one of those comparisons where you say it sounds like someone who's known for being creative, so it just sounds creative. This is a spectacular album, and music's loss will have to be Resident Evil 17's gain. Films suck. Oddly, Milla also kind of made a second album, although not with her consent. I've listened to it, and I see why she didn't want it released. They're not really credible songs. But she has done some song work since that shows that the spirit's still there. Really, I respect her so much as a musician, and I couldn't give a shit about films. Now, across to Japan. Or actually something that I bought because their only compilation was Japanese. This is an American band. And another example of something that I'm gonna go ahead and call emo, maybe emo pop. It's that kind of the mainstream fun emo. Maybe it's more pop punk, punk pop, whatever. But not the obscure, difficult, fugazi fans who want to blame victims. More harmonic, cute guitar boys who want to make emotionally expressive and fun pop songs. A friend at school was into Sugarcult and lent me their, maybe 2 at the time, albums. And they've always gone down in my mind as I'm really into the singles and not entirely into the albums. There's not many examples of a band like that for me, and maybe that's being overly judgmental, maybe the rest of the tracks are fine, but I did check out their 3rd release, and I think I like that one more, but also felt it as the same, and eventually figured out I probably want the best of Sugarcult, and researched it, and there was a Japanese compilation because bands tortured Japan and they get enjoyed in Japan, and Japan gets exclusive CD releases. I don't usually condone reducing things to compilations like this, but if you hear the best of Sugarcult, if you go and put their singles on, they're just such a beautiful version of that pop-punk sound. It's that without all the excruciating bits. They're hella good at it, and they should have been a bigger success. I've already pointed out one nice swooshy mid-2000s debut album from someone I didn't keep up with the rest of. Here's another. This is that, but specifically from The Cure fans. Boys who really want to be The Cure, but are in a scene of disco indie. So they become disco indie The Cure, and that's a worthwhile thing to be. For the duration of one album at least, the song The Melting Moon is in my head way too frequently for how obscure a reference this is, and honestly how little I actually put this on, That one song, that bloody riff. Have I actually neglected the 90s in this episode? Maybe the 90s things have all become their own videos. With the exception of laughable band name Eve's Plum. Are they forgotten? I think they're forgotten. There's an interesting thing about them at the end that if you haven't forgotten them, well, real solid debut of the grunge era, not quite perfectly produced. I feel this could improve from a remaster, but just an example of something that's up there among American 90s rock, even if it's not seen as being up there among American 90s rock. Kind of same story as with JJ72. The second one tries more varied things, and some of it sticks. It ultimately sounds better in total, but the content doesn't quite match up. Still alright. There's one song on here where she says, and this is a singer in a rock band, she says, "I want to be a fairy princess," and that was quite prescient. Colleen, the vocalist from this quite aggressive rock band, you know, she's got some screamed vocals. It very easily fits into the wave of 1993 era rock. Went on to become, and I think American viewers will know what this is, and Brits and etc. might not know at all, the pop singer Vitamin C. I think that can go up there among the strangest reinventions in pop music history. I mean, she's good at that bad music. She's kind of suited to it and couldn't have let that much more out of Eve's Plum. So how can I blame her for succeeding? Me, I've got these to enjoy. And Landfill Indie Wave, but maybe the best individual album of it. Through how much they consciously owe to Prince, through the yelping vocals being made into an art form, but also through the genius, witty little songs. They struggled for a long time to follow this up. I know Reggie's got another band. They did eventually manage to follow it up, and maybe they shouldn't have bothered. Yeah, I tried that one at the time, and some of it's cute. I went to see them live last year because they were playing this album in its entirety, and it's only about half an hour long. So they padded it out with second album stuff, and okay, I respect their ability to do that because they also delivered one of the best half hours. Now I am getting to Japan via, yes, a band who did some international and UK touring in the Landfill Indie Wave. You know roughly how old I am. Polysics are such an energized and quirky band. The adjective quirky has followed me throughout life as nearly an insult, and I take it as a compliment. It's a compliment here. It's so difficult to keep up with the career of a Japanese band. I got a couple of the earlier things. The compilation that they promoted when they went worldwide, and then did my best to keep up with their Japanese career since. But the way the Japanese industry works, it's a lot more fast-paced. It's kind of like what we had in the 70s, one album per year. Gigging in Japan, you don't have to tour to all that many different places. You don't even have to stay up late. There is also going to be a language barrier in trying to enjoy Japanese music. Unless you know a particular language. I think it's Japanese. But Polysics are kind of an exception, as they have chosen ridiculously to sing in a kind of gibberish. A bit Japanese, a bit English, and mostly nonsense. That sounds like a terrible idea, and they've made it a great idea. They're very open with how much they owe to Devo, but it's with a live wire connected. It's at a punk pace, and it's such fun nonsense. I am too culturally distant to really have a proper go at ranking the albums. Let's just say they're generally good, and really great individual songs. Of course, in the regard of collecting CDs and not being fluent in Japanese, not that much Japanese music gets to me. I really respect the vibe of J-rock, and maybe I'll try to get more into it, and right now I'll make you a post-production, anecdote opinion piece about that. Maybe it's because I look like every member of X-Japan, but I think there's a lot to admire in J-rock, in how it's maintained as a rock scene, and in how it's an amped-up version of Western glam, which is itself has influence from kabuki. Some bits of popular culture have bounced back east to west like that and just made their own thing from the bits they got wrong. You see it in animation, movies, video games, how a reciprocated fascination with the other side becomes this beautiful mutual handjob. From the glimpses I encounter, I feel J-rock has maintained a melodic integrity and an emotional range that only a few Western rockettes manage. Maybe symphonic metal things on the better end of Muse, but less exhausting, and maybe Ghost, but less goofy and better vocals. I've not managed to tune into their music, but every time I glimpse, something kinda blows me away. But until I do the work to get into that, I can enjoy the stuff from anime. The Nana soundtrack isn't that far from the idol scene of just commercial manufactured music, but it's made in a punk vibe, and there's fucking Guns N' Roses band members on this. There's 2 bands in the show, and I got the compilation of a bit of both of them, and the one that's meant to represent Nana's band. It's short for an album, but the songs that are in the anime are fucking good, and the songs that are not in the anime do match up. Trap Nest, by their very diegetic design, are a bit less for me. You know, if you are honestly a fan of that fictional band, there's slight problematic elements to that. And yet the things written for them are also pretty damn good. There's Nothing's Gonna Change My Love and Recorded Butterflies. They are fucking great songs. The 2 singers who did these voices do have their own careers. They're kinda either a bit rock chick because of what culminated in the Nana soundtrack. I also fucking love Otsuki Kenji because I fucking love Sayonara Zetsubou Sensei, and 3 of his original songs were the intro themes, and I'm doing an ongoing project of making translated versions. There are also other songs in the anime that I dig, but Kenji made an album with the Seiyu Shoujo as like backing singers, with 2 of the opening themes, that rap bit guy who's pretty awesome, but the other songs on this aren't all that important, and it is lacking the 3rd opening theme, but it was made before the 3rd opening theme. One last Japanesey thing, and the manner in which this is a Japanesey thing is a bit strange. FEMM had a viral hit with their openly comedic and provocative song Fuck Boys Get Money. That's kind of a bit trap beat. I don't really know what trap beat is. That song is a bit trap beat. But if you go and check out their other singles, it's really melodic, very heavily processed pop that kind of sounds like the pop at the time turned hyper. Hyper pop, would that be a good idea? Their shtick of being android mannequins really carries it through. It's surprising how well that maintains. And this is just an epic pop album that's almost a parody of epic pop albums. All the beats it hits are very standard, but they're just ridiculously good at it. Now, if you look behind the scenes at the names of the songwriters, there's a lot of Western names there. And from their perspective, maybe they could have recruited anyone for this project. I'm not into the artificial factory pop like that, except for this particular moment when it just turned out great, because it's self-aware. It's a rare example of properties like pitch correction being used as a proper feature. And not just all those times people make excuses to use it as a feature and it still sounds awful, it sounds great here. It's a self-aware piece of satire of pop, of how we treat women, but it's also a really great pop album. When I bought this, it came with this extra remix CD. It's got a couple of original non-remix tracks, and of course non-remix tracks are going to be better than remixes, but even the remixes are listenable. I tried keeping up with FEMM. They did a covers album of Japanese pop songs from the past that, has a pretty specifically Japanese appeal I didn't manage to get into. And these days they're doing that cutesy mumble pop vibe, and they barely even seem like robots anymore. I see that that's the correct thing to do after making things that just sound like an amped up Lady Gaga when Lady Gaga was a big thing. Now they're turning the current thing up to 11. That's the correct thing for this project to pursue. It just happens to result in uninteresting music. I've got through everything I piled up there. That didn't sound like a conclusion. I'm still working on ranking the album's videos. This one feels like it's going to be really large. Let me know what you think.